Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive here in Sky Studios. In the next half an hour, we'll be seeing what's making the headlines with the Daily Express columnist Carole Malone and the editor at the Courier, David Clegg. A very good evening to both of you.
Hello.
But first, let's see what's on some of those front pages, shall we? And the Queen's conversation with health leaders about the vaccine rollout dominates the headlines tonight, including this one, The Mirror. The Express is calling it Queen's shock message. One is not immune, says the headline for the Metro, as it also splashes on the Queen's vaccine endorsement. And it's the same story on the front of the Telegraph. Queen says refusing vaccine is selfish. Well, the Mail also leads with Her Majesty's words. And the front of the Sun, right as rain, the headline for them. Well, the newspaper has a budget preview. It says NHS workers will not get a pay rise. More predictions for next week's budget in the Times with the headline Sunak's tax raid on pensioners, reporting the Chancellor's post-COVID economic plan. Mr Potato Head loses meat and 2 veg is the Daily Star's top story as the children's toy goes gender neutral. Warnings about the climate crisis lead The Guardian. It says more storms and colder weather could be coming to the UK. And Alex Salmond's inquiry appearance tomorrow has been dubbed the Holyrood Showdown by the Courier. Well, let's bring in Carole and David, shall we? And start then with Her Majesty's interesting royal audience. We don't often hear from Her Majesty in this kind of way, do we, Carole? What did you make of it all?
No, I think it's come at exactly the right time, this intervention. What she's basically saying, and it's made most of the front pages tomorrow, she's saying it's important that people get this vaccine. They've got to think of others before themselves. This was a video chat with vaccine rollout leaders, and she's very passionate about the vaccine. She's had it herself, and she's trying to tell people it doesn't hurt, that you should get it. And the Queen, and people might not know, but she's credited with boosting the vaccine rollout for polio in the 50s. Lots of people were scared of getting that too, and she revealed publicly. And remember, the monarch didn't talk about her kids back then, but she revealed publicly that her children had had the vaccine, and that helped with the rollout, and maybe that's what she's doing this for now. Patrick Vallance has estimated that 1 in 5 people won't get the vaccine now, because there are lots of people are citing lots of crazy reasons why they won't have it. It's some women are fearful that they won't get pregnant again. Various ethnic minorities are frightened of what's in it. They've been told stuff what's in it. Lots of people are saying it hasn't been tested properly. So it's there is resistance to this, and we can't have a situation where you have 4/5 of the country vaccinated and the other half not, because they pose a danger to each other and to everyone else. So it's important that this message gets across.
Yeah, and as you say, there has been no scientific evidence to back up any of those concerns that you listed there, Carole.
No.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, David? We don't really tend to hear Her Majesty's opinions on anything, but in this instance, it is, well, not just helpful, but I suppose deemed acceptable in terms of the royal protocol.
Yes, I mean, it's not a political point she's making. What she's saying is absolutely medical fact. There's no discussion or debate about that amongst people who know what they're talking about. I think the point that Carole makes there about the polio vaccine and this long history was actually quite interesting, I think, because what it brought home to us is that vaccine skepticism is not new. It's a long-standing thing. That's the case from the 50s. There was also obviously the MMR vaccine and the various scares about that in the late 1990s. And we now have this situation at the minute, which the vaccine minister has said there's a tsunami of misinformation out there about that. I think the problem is more acute now because of the information ecosystem we have, because of social media. If you go on social media anywhere, it's awash with false claims about what the vaccine can do. We've also seen politicians who frankly should know better in Europe making claims about the efficiency of the vaccine, which are false and have caused serious problems there. We're seeing more problems, I think, with skepticism about the vaccine in countries like France and Germany because of some of the issues that their politicians have got into. So I do think this is a very welcome move from the Queen. I guess the question is, what kind of impact does it have these days on people who have fallen down these social media rabbit holes and are worried about the prospects of the vaccine? But really, we need every voice with any authority and credibility to be speaking out and doing this, because what we have seen in the UK is, after what most people would say has probably been a pretty poor response to the COVID pandemic in general, we certainly seem to have been pretty good on getting the vaccine rollout right. I think the UK government deserve credit for that. And so now that we have this vaccine available to us, that the infrastructure has been put in place well, I think it's vital that everyone who is eligible gets it as quickly as possible.
And of course, the Queen does have a global platform, doesn't she? And we know that EmmanuelMacron has today said that he would take the Oxford vaccine if he was offered it. But you wonder if anyone in France hearing from Her Majesty might change their mind. And we should say also, Carole, it's nice to see Her Majesty smiling and looking relaxed, given this will be her husband's 10th night in hospital, the Duke of Edinburgh. And he's been, on everyone's minds these last few days.
And we all wish him incredibly well. It would feel, I've been thinking about this a lot this week. It would feel very wrong if something happened to him now. You don't want to see either of them lose they're each other's rock, and we don't want to see that happen. But can I just go back? Macron now talking about endorsing AstraZeneca. He is the person who put the frighteners on everybody. When there was the big row over the procurement a month or so ago, they all wanted AstraZeneca. Then when they realised they couldn't get it, when Germany and France couldn't commandeer our supplies, they started rubbishing it and saying it didn't work. Now, because the vaccine rollout is so bad in France, less than 1 in 10 people have been vaccinated, they now have to try and repatriate the AstraZeneca and say that it works, because the propaganda that both the German government have put out and the French government have put people off. And this is why it's so important the Queen is saying this now, because propaganda works in countries like France and Germany. The front page of the Bild newspaper today in Germany, the biggest selling newspaper, said, "We envy you Brits because they're not getting vaccinated and we are." And it's mostly the fault of their leaders, who A, didn't order the vaccines early enough, and B, poo-pooed AstraZeneca. And, the proof of the pudding is here, where, the rates are plummeting in this country. We're going to be out by June. They're going into their third wave and possibly another lockdown in both of those countries.
Yeah, absolutely. David, should we take a look now at the newspaper and turn our attention to next week's budget? And, of course, everybody's been hailing and clapping, haven't they, for NHS workers over the last year. And yet no NHS pay rise in the budget as it stands at the moment.
Yes, the newspaper is reporting on its front page tomorrow that there will be no pay rise for NHS workers in Rishi Sunak's budget next week. I think that if that is the case, it will be a very controversial decision. We know that the unions, Unison in particular, have been calling for a significant pay rise. They would like a flat payment of £2,000 for all NHS workers, I think. And even in Scotland this week, there was an announcement from the Scottish government that they had an interim pay rise of 1%, which they're backdating to the start of December, with the intent of seeing what happens in the budget next week and what's known as Barnett consequentials, which is the money that will then flow through to the Scottish government to see what pay rise they could provide in Scotland. But even that announcement of a 1% pay rise was met with actually a bit of anger from the trade unions, from Unison here. They're saying that that's not enough. So if we actually get to next week and we're told there's no pay rise at all, I think there'll be a lot of anger, especially because we have said over the last year, NHS heroes, the work that they've had to do, unimaginable for those of us who haven't had to be on the front line of the COVID pandemic. So if we do get to a no pay rise situation, I think that could be a very difficult political situation for the Chancellor and the Conservative government. Yeah,
very emotive one, that indeed. Carole, let's take a look before we go to the advert break at the Daily Mirror. This story, again, in lots of the papers, quite an extraordinary story, really. Lady Gaga offering a reward for anyone to come forward after her dog walker was shot 4 times in the chest.
This is an incredible story, we all love our dogs, but, she's offered this $500,000 no questions asked reward for the people who stole her dogs to bring them back. She doesn't seem to be too worried about the fact that the dog walker, a guy called Ryan Fisher, has been shot 4 times in the chest. He's going to live, but it's hardly the point. And what this does, not only does it seem a little bit heartless on her part, with a total disregard for the law, she's actually been slammed by the FBI for this, but also this creates a market for people to steal celebrity dogs, because this has had exactly the kind of effect that those people who stole her dogs, it was two guys in dark clothing, this has had exactly the kind of effect they wanted. Those dogs, those French bulldogs that were stolen, can bring up to 10 grand on the open market. However, she's offering them 500 grand for two dogs. So this is going to happen to other celebrities, and God forbid that it looks like there may be other shootings because of it. This will make them desperate now.
A whole new angle to the sort of American gun crime problem and inadvertently setting a bounty. Unbelievable. We have to leave it there, but we will be back after the break with lots more, including the Hollywood showdown. Alex Salmond's appearance tomorrow making the headlines like this from David's Courier. See you in a moment. Welcome back. We're taking a look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview with the Daily Express columnist Carole Malone and the editor at the Courier, David Clegg. Welcome back to both of you. Of course, this huge story that's been a bit of political theatre all week and promises to continue for the next couple. Carole, this on the front of the Telegraph tomorrow, Nicola Sturgeon struggling to contain the SNP rebellion. Where does this all lead?
You know, this story's been kind of rumbling on for weeks, but it's actually exploded in the last 3 or 4 days. I think Ms Sturgeon was thinking it might go away, but absolutely not. Andrew Neil did an excruciating piece in the Mail today talking about, he called Scotland a banana republic without the bananas, and Liam Fox called it, what was he called it? He said it was being run like a tin pot dictatorship. I mean, he's right. There is so much happening there. You know, vital documents being censored or banned, the media is being cowed, there's important information is being suppressed, bloggers are being threatened with jail, and it seems like all of the institutions in Scotland are colluding to protect Miss Sturgeon. She is accusing Salmond of making wild accusations. And yet, Salmond wants to go into Parliament, and he is going in tomorrow. He wanted to go in this week, but he was told that 474 words of his statement were going to be redacted. He says the words that have been redacted from that statement are the things that will prove that Nicola Sturgeon misled Parliament. So it seems like everything's conspiring in those institutions to protect her. And what's happened today, it's, nationalists have always been like totally behind Sturgeon and the SNP, but support, as you said, is falling apart in Parliament. MSPs are saying to her that if it's found there was a witch hunt against Salmond, she will have to resign. And there was a Murray poll today saying her popularity has plummeted by 16%.
Well, I want to bring in David Clegg, because, of course, your paper carrying this and you've been covering this story right from day dot. Where do you think this is all going to lead, and what are the implications for the election in May and, dare I say, for another independence referendum? And they're far-reaching implications.
So I think I'll just start by saying, as a newspaper editor and as someone who's been covering this story for 2.5 years, who in fact broke the story that Alex Salmond was under investigation for sexual harassment, I don't recognise her description of Scotland or its institutions or its media or indeed its parliament. Now, clearly this is an extremely serious situation, and there is no doubt that Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish government have questions to answer. But I think we should remember what those questions are and what the issue we are examining here. Alex Salmond, for a start, has been cleared by a jury of sexual assault allegations. So he is not on trial here. What this committee investigation that he's appearing in front of tomorrow is to get to the bottom of why the Scottish government civil service botched so badly and in a humiliating way their initial investigation into the sexual harassment complaints against him, and how they failed him and the two women who made complaints against him. Now, that is the nub of this issue, but you could not really tell from much of the coverage that's been going on about this. We're in a very febrile atmosphere, but we're also at quite a dangerous moment, I think, because this talk of the Crown colluding to cover up for Nicola Sturgeon is nonsense. Now, Alex Salmond is a wounded animal. He is angry and he is out for revenge.
OK, we're running out of time.
Every
10
right
seconds
to have
left.
a say.
We'll talk more about it next hour. And, of course, we'll have more on that story. David Clegg, Carole Malone, thank you both very much. We'll have more on that story at the top of the next hour as well. Stay with us.